Here's a pattern almost every person with neuropathy eventually experiences. They try something new, it feels promising, and the symptoms begin to ease. They notice some relief, and for the first time in a while, they think to themselves, okay, this is finally working. And for a period of time, it is working. Then weeks go by, sometimes months, and progress eventually begins to slow. Not dramatically, and not all at once. It simply stops moving forward. That moment, that's where frustration begins to set in for most people, because almost no one explains why this is happening. People are told what to try, but they're rarely told what to expect. So today, we are going to talk about something that almost never gets explained clearly: why local fixes plateau over time. So let's state this clearly and directly. Most neuropathy treatments work at first. Symptoms slow down, pain eases, sleep improve, and then progress just stops. That doesn't mean the treatment failed. It usually means the treatment was designed to quiet symptoms, not to change the system driving those symptoms. Now, this makes people uncomfortable because if something helped, we automatically assume it should keep helping. But biology, it does not work that way. Local treatments are designed to do a very specific job. They reduce pain, calm irritation, they lower intensity, they quiet sensory noise. And early on, many of them do exactly that. The pain decreases, burning fades, your sleep begins to improve. That early relief, it always creates hope. And hope matters. But there is the distinction that most people never hear. Early relief does not mean the problem was solved. What usually changed was the signal of how the nerve works, not the system. This is where expectations quietly drift out of alignment, because when people feel better, they assume recovery has started. And when improvement slows down, they automatically assume something must have gone wrong, either with the treatment or with their own bodies. And the reality of it is, most of the time, neither of those are true. Plateaus are not a motivation problem. They are a model problem. People are operating inside of a framework that was never designed to create long-term stability. Most neuropathy cares will follow a local model. There is pain in the feet, numbness in the toes, burning, tingling, electric sensations. So the focus becomes the nerve itself. We think, calm the nerve, stimulate the nerve, block the signal, just to reduce the symptom. That approach, it feels logical, and early on, it feels effective. But relief and recovery are not governed by the same rules. This is the part that really matters. Local treatments reduce symptoms. They do not change the environment the nerve lives in. And the nerves are not wires. They are living tissue. Living tissue adapts to conditions. If the environment surrounding the nerve remains unstable, the nerve remains vulnerable. The delivery stays inconsistent, metabolic stress continues, inflammatory load fluctuates, mechanical strain and sensory confusion keep going. So even if the signal quiets temporarily, the system pulls it back into the same pattern. That is when progress begins to stall. That is the plateau. This is why people feel so blindsided. They were not imagining the improvements. They really felt better. They were just never told what the treatment was actually designed to do. Doing more local fix cannot solve a system level issue. At best, repetition delays the plateau, but it will never prevent it. So this is where the frustration turns inward. People start blaming themselves. They assume maybe they waited too long. They assume the damage is slowly just progressing. They assume that they failed the process. And that narrative is very, very harmful. And most of the time, it's false. In neuropathy, symptoms often reflect signal behavior, not tissue destruction. Signal behavior changes when conditions fluctuate. Your sleep quality, your stress levels, blood sugar variability, inflammatory burden, activity level, footwear, temperature, and the list goes on and on. That is why symptoms can change from day to day. You'll always hear people say things like, "Oh, it was awful last night, but this morning is much calmer. My test looked normal, but it still feels like I'm walking on rocks. It's worse when I'm tired. It's worse when I'm stressed. It's worse at night." Now, that pattern, it's not imagined. That is exactly how an unstable system behaves. Now we need to go one layer deeper. Over time, nerve behavior is governed by upstream forces. When those forces remain unstable, the progress begins to slow. First, delivery. Most people think circulation means blocked arteries, but nerves rely on what we call microdelivery, small vessel exchange, oxygen diffusion, nutrient transport at a tissue level. You can have normal imaging and still have declining function. Next, let's look at metabolic stability. Nerves are metabolically demanding tissue. A1C is an average. Neuropathy is often driven by variability. Fluctuation creates chemical noise that keeps nerves irritable, even when numbers improve. The next one is your inflammatory load. Inflammation amplifies sensitivity, burning, electrical sensations, the sharp discomfort. When symptoms worsen with stress or poor sleep, that is not psychological. That's just physiology. And the last one is the mechanical stress and sensory input. Your pain alters movement. Movement alters delivery. Reduced delivery worsens the signal, and worse signaling increases that fear. And the loop reinforces itself. If you do not recognize the loop, you treat output while the loop just continues, and eventually progress will stall again. Here's an important clarification. Some nerves are damaged, some are stressed, some are noisy but intact. And those distinctions, they matter. They determine what change is possible, how long it takes, and what should never be promised. This is why ethical care will always avoid guarantees. Neuropathy is multi-factor, cumulative, and time-dependent. Now, on the emotional side, most people with neuropathy, they try so many things. They've done medication, supplements, creams, injections, therapies, and sometimes even surgery. They have a little bit of hope, and that's why they keep trying. But they also have a little bit of shame because it's just not working. The worst thing you can do is feel like it's your fault. So here's the correct reframe for your mind. Persistent symptoms do not mean that you failed. They usually mean the environment around the nerve did not stabilize enough to change the direction. Now, that's not blame, that's just how biology works. So the big question is not how do I fix my nerves? The better question, what conditions do my nerve need to function reliably over time? Now that question, that changes everything. people will stop chasing daily symptoms, stop reacting emotionally to flares, and stop switching strategies every few weeks, they start to build stability. And stability changes outcome more than intensity, especially when it comes to your nerves. Because nerves don't adapt, nerves will always adapt to patterns, not bursts. Progress does not require perfect days. It often looks like fewer bad days, shorter flares, predictable mornings, better balance, and more confidence. Quiet progress, cumulative progress, meaningful progress.